Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got another deck profile for you. This time, we're looking at Madolche, which I don't even remember if I've ever done on the channel. It's always been a deck I've liked. I actually picked them up when I came back into the game because I love their designs. I thought they were creative, all that stuff, and they're pretty powerful as well, and they've only gotten more and more with new cards. So, not only that, but we also have some new engines coming to the game. The Vernusylphs definitely help this deck a little bit, as well as the Ishizu fairies when those drop in the next week or so. And I wasn't sure how quickly I'll be able to get the Ishizu cards in person, so I want to do this deck profile kind of preemptively here. But there's some really cool stuff going on here. There's a lot of really cool interactions. A lot of these engines really help cover up some of the weaknesses that I felt like Madolches have had for quite a little bit here. But we'll get into that as we go. Other than that, keep in mind, this is like a first attempt to build. There's definitely some shifting around to do. Maybe it's a ratio shift. Maybe there are cards that aren't in here that definitely should be. And you know, that could be a thing you shift around. But don't take this list as gospel. There's definitely some movement to be had. But let's get into this thing. So starting off here, we start with like the basic Madolche engine here. Obviously triple Madolche, that's one card combo. Obviously triple Angeli, also one card combo, but very, very important in this list, even more so than before being a one card combo, because it is a Earth Fairy. That becomes very, very important in the deck. Secondly, we also have Madolche Petting Sasor. This card also was one of the most crucial cards in the deck, but gets even better. Again, Earth Fairy, very, very important. We'll get to that later. Still a phenomenal extender if you need it, but also just can be pretty much a starter for you as well. Next up, you have Hoot Cake. Really cool card. Essentially can become a starter as long as you can put a monster in grave, any name, which this deck does actually pretty well between hand traps and cards that like discard a card from hand to kind of get going before you even have to commit Hoot Cake. He's actually quite a bit better in this list than he's been before, but at the end of the day, he does still have a requirement, so I'm still okay leaving him as a 2 of in the list instead of a 3 of. I've seen people go up to 3. That just feels like a little bit too much overcommitment, and also just like a lot of normal summons, like Madeline, Angeli, both normal summons. You know, so that would be 8 normal summon, or 9 normal summons if you played all 3. Just kind of a little bit too much for me. Next up, we have Messenger Lotto and the Pudding Cess. We'll clump these together because they're essentially just bricks. Hate to say it, but yeah, they're just bricks. They're a little bit less of bricks than they have been before. You got to play the 2 Messenger Lotto because if you draw one, it's just dead. Like your plays are just like pretty, like super, super weak. So you got to play the second one just to have one in rotation at all times. But to be fair, some of the new cards actually do make better use of him, or at least one of them does, than we've had before. So it could be okay. Other Pudding Cess, she's very important because when Petting Sasor summons a monster, a Madolche from deck, it lowers its level by 1. So to make a rank 4 off of her, you need to play Pudding Cess. Also, her utility removal effect is not too bad. And again, in this deck, Earth Fairies. Those are the keys. Is another Earth Fairy, 7 total in just the Madolche engine by itself, which is very, very nice. Now I move to the 1 Vernusylph card we're playing here. Triple copies of Vernalizer Fairy of Seedlings and Haze. Very, very good card. This card pitches itself with any other monster to add an Earth Fairy from deck to hand, then special summon an Earth monster from grave. Any Earth, no restriction there on effects or anything, which is actually quite good. And yeah, it means like stuff like pitching this with Hoot Cake. Get the Hoot Cake back, and then you get an Earth Fairy to search. So now you already have Hoot Cake with a monster in grave, so that's already like a play. And then also searching another Earth Fairy, which could be either any of the Ishizu fairies, or it could be Angeli, or if you need an extender, even Petting Sasor. So really, really good searchability off this card. You really hit like a ton of bases on what you're able to search. Plus, obviously, like the fact that it reborns a monster from grave as well means like you really do get like really solid value off this card. And I think this is one of those perfect decks for cards like Vernusylphs that kind of feel like they're all break even. They don't plus you as much as you would wish they would. But the good thing is, Madolche is an archetype filled with monsters that when they resolve, like one of their starters resolving, like leads you into like a ton of free advantage. So like it's okay that this card feels almost like a -1 or even a break even at times, because it's going to lead you to hella pluses if you're summoning something like pitching and reborning like an Angeli, or pitching and reborning a Hoot Cake, which I really, really love. So really, really solid in this deck. Next up, we have the actual Ishizu cards. We have triple Mudora. He is phenomenal. You can pitch him with another Earth Fairy to special from hand, then place a Gravekeeper's Trap from your deck into your spell and trap zone. We'll get to that card a little later on. And then obviously him and Keldo share the same effect from field or grave. They can quick effect banish themselves to target 3 cards in the graveyard and shuffle them back into the deck. So essentially like a triple DD Crow. Absolutely insane what these cards are able to do disruption-wise on the graveyard. And then Keldo's has like the similar first effect as Mudora, except she pitches herself you pitch another Earth Fairy to special herself, and then she adds either Exchange of the Spirit or a card that names it in its text. So you're either adding Gravekeeper's Trap, right? Is this one list? Yeah. So you're either searching like Gravekeeper's Trap, your Keldo for a hand trap, or Mudora as well. Which is still pretty good, so you got to respect it. Still a really good card, also with that graveyard disruption. Just good. They're all really solid, actually. But yeah, Mudora is definitely the best one in this list because it searches the Gravekeeper's Trap, which like is super good for the deck. 2 copies of Kelbeck. You don't actually care about the mill as much on this card, which is kind of funny because it's one of the best effects when you're playing this card versus, you know, or in tier or something like that. But in this list, he's just kind of another hand trap. He is just straight up a hand trap, so that's 2 more copies. I think we hit 10 total in the deck, which actually feels pretty good. But also the fact that he's searchable on the opponent's turn, he's searchable on your turn. You just have super easy access to this card where even if it's not like the best hand trap overall, if it's a hand trap your own engine can get and consistently, I think it actually works out pretty damn nicely. So those are the only ones I play. I don't play Agito. I don't think you need 3 Kelbeck. You have ways to recycle him. You have ways to search him on the opponent's turn. Super accessible, so that's why I like more than one, just in case the second one comes up, but still really solid. From there, we move to some hand traps. Herald of the Orange Light. This card is so broken in this deck. Let's count the fairies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 total. Because obviously you can pitch a second Orange Light for the first one. So 20 fairies total in the main deck. That is so consistent for this card. It being able to allow you to resolve combo through interruptions, allowing you to just stop nib if it's ever a problem for you, as well as, you know, playing second, being able to play through boards by, you know, using this to pretty much negate an interruption from your opponent. Insanely strong. This card is great in this build. You have to play it. I think it's mandatory. Really good. On top of that, we play triple copies of Veiler, double copies of Crow. I know what you're saying. These hand traps look outdated, John. Imperm is just better Veiler. And the Bestials are just better DD Crows. I hear you. I'm with you. But there are very cool interactions with Glass Souffle and Chateau. So Chateau says if any monster in the grave would be returned to the deck by a Madolche card, you can add it to your hand instead. And then Glass Souffle can actually target any 2 cards in the graveyards and shuffle them back into the decks. So with the cool interaction there is that like if your end board is Glass Souffle and you had either actually any of these 3 hand traps, because they're non-once per turn as well, which is very important, you could fire DD Crow versus like a tier, for example, tier deck, Glass Souffle shuffling like the DD Crow, maybe one other card from your opponent's graveyard back into the deck to interrupt them. And that would then use Chateau to add the DD Crow back to hand, not once per turn, fire it immediately again. So you get to like double use some of these hand traps because of that setup ability, which is really cool. And like at the end of the day, I think Imperm's only marginally better than Veiler, but because of that synergy, Veiler becomes a little bit more useful here. And same thing with DD Crow, like because of that usefulness, like Bestials, Bestial's obviously really strong. You definitely could still try to play them if you want. You could also try to fit Kashtira Fenrir in here with like seedlings. It's actually pretty cool because you could like pitch it for seedlings, search a starter, and then just reborn the Kashtira, search another one, apply pressure that way before you even have to commit to your normal, which is pretty cool. So that's like another going second card you could definitely try to like make room for if you want to cut some stuff. You don't have to play this many hand traps. You could definitely cut like the DD Crows and play Fenrir instead or something. But yeah, I still like this here for where it is. And also, Fenrir is like super expensive as well, which is kind of the reason I've been holding off on some of the decks here. But really, really cool interactions. From there, Triple Prosperity, it's a great consistency card. This is definitely a deck where, like, because of 1, 2, 3 bricks, and like if you don't have a good hand with Hoot Cake's kind of a brick, right? Drawing the fairies if you don't have enough discards to make them work, it's kind of bricky, right? Gravekeeper's Trap. There's just a handful of stuff that you can open that end up being kind of bricky. So Prosperity definitely covers up a lot of that. And also Post-Side, being able to dig for blowout cards going second or even going first is really, really useful. So I still like this card here. 1 Chateau, 1 Salon, not playing Ticket. Ticket just feels like overkill. And again, like too many bricks. Like you're not searching all of them in the same turn usually. So like, why play ones that you're not getting access to early? Because you're just probably drawing more of them throughout tournaments, and that's really awful. Then 2 Promenade, really phenomenal card for interruption. Just like negate anything, essentially. It's really good. Stops board breakers versus your deck. I really like this card a lot. And then 1 Gravekeeper's Trap. I don't play Exchange of the Spirit because it's just a little bit overkill. We don't play enough mill cards in the deck to consistently set it up. But the main thing for this card is during the main phase, you can discard any card to add a Gravekeeper's monster or an Earth Fairy. So you can add Kelbeck on the opponent's turn to just be an interruption. You can add Mudora or Keldo on a turn to like get it going, as well as like discard them. Discarding them from hand, if you just had them extra in hand, boom, puts them in grave for their graveyard interruptions. Very key. You can also search your Seedlings and Haze. You can search Pudding Cess. You can search Petting Sessor, and you can search Angeli. So the utility off this card is amazing. That's why I play it with the Mudora. That's why Mudora is the best one to me, because Mudora setting this up turn 1 is huge, because it means, oh, I didn't have a starter? Cool, I can grab Angeli. 1 card starter. If I had a starter but I got interrupted with 1 hand trap, boom, I'm searching Petting Sessor and just playing right through it. Actually, there's like some really, really good, like this card's really phenomenal in the deck. And obviously the ability to potentially see your opponent's draws is also very good as well. Into the extra, Triple Glass Souffle. This to me is like probably the best overall extra deck monster for the archetype. It's very important, shuffling cards back, being a very sticky, big, annoying board to deal with. Very good as well. Double Tiara Misu. This is how you clear boards. This card's incredible. It only targets cards in your graveyard. It does not target the cards on the field. So it's a non-target shuffle for stuff on the field. It's very, very powerful. Triple Chocolate a la mode. This allows you to do certain combos where this card's not once per turn or anything. So being able to like continually summon from deck is pretty broken. And then 1 Giant Hand, 1 Dweller, and 1 Exciton Knight for some rank 4s that just, cover different levels of utility. Dweller, higher ceiling, but definitely matchup dependent. Giant Hand kind of hitting anything. Any deck will kind of not love this, although, but it does kind of hit everything, so it's a little more of a catch-all. And then Exciton Knight for going second to be able to kind of catch somebody off guard and maybe pull a duel back from the depths of despair. And then Zeus, you might as well play it. A lot of Exceed stuff you're making in this deck, so it's pretty cool. 2 Madolche Fresh Sistart as well. Obviously, this card's really good with the protection it offers and floatability, which is pretty cool. And the last card here is Asa. I like this a lot because of like Fenrir. Also, if you play like a Mirror versus an Ishizu deck, being able to like reborn their Ishizu cards to be able to like extend for you is pretty cool. Or even like a Vernusylph card. There's like a couple things. Even in it's obviously in Madolche Mirror, like revive an opponent's Angeli and just boom, combo off is pretty cool. But I don't expect this guy to come that often, but it definitely could. There's a couple cool things in the side deck as well that like aren't really side deck cards, but just cards I considered. Obviously the Ticket. A couple of the other Vernusylphs, none of them are particularly bad. I just felt like this was the only one that like directly translated to this deck, whereas some of these are like interesting, but we have so many good Earth. Like this searches an Earth Fairy, so you're like, oh, what if I don't want a Madolche? Well, you could want Medora, you could want Keldo, you could want Kelbeck just for a hand trap. So there's like legit 5 good search targets off this card already. I felt like adding another Vernusylph wasn't really doing that much. DD Crow, third one potentially, and then Shifter. So this is the one thing that I would argue is like the one true big payoff for playing this variant over what was more closely related to like the past variants. And that was the fact that those variants could play Shifter and have no regrets about it. Obviously, Shifter is a huge leg up in the format. This deck can't play it and therefore doesn't have quite as good a matchup, or at least like an inherent like bully for Ishizu decks. And that's definitely something to look at. I mean, I still think this variant is just so much well-rounded in so many other ways. Consistency, the ability to get like more graveyard interruption, like all that stuff. That I still think it's probably a better deck overall, but there is definitely, you can definitely harp on the fact that like Shifter's not nearly as good in this list, and that definitely hurts the deck's ability to just steal wins versus the best decks in the game. So it's definitely worth mentioning. But there you go. There's my list. I think it's a really cool list. I love the synergy. I love that these cards like read like they're so specific, but then there's like a couple of decks that just have like such powerful, good synergy with these cards. And I think it leads to like some really, really cool deck builds. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Really cool list. Obviously, this is just my first attempt at it. It feels good. It feels like the ratios are pretty close. But maybe there's an argument that Prosperity doesn't need to be a 3 of, that some other hand trap's going to be there. We can play something else, the Fenrir, stuff like that. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts at the end of the day. Let me know in the comment section down below any additional ideas you have for the list and maybe some other ways to clean it up. Add some things that that you feel like it needs. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on that as well. But I am out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching as always. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from your boy down the line. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.